I'm going to call the Judiciary Committee to order. Madam Clerk, will you please call for attendance?
Chair Lightner.
Here.
Representatives Bagol.
Here.
Wozniak.
Here.
Harris.
Here.
DeBoyer.
Here.
Johnson. Here. Schutte.
Here.
Carter.
Here.
Hope. Here. Green. Scott.
Present.
Madam Chair, you have 10 members present. You do have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Rep. Bagol moves to excuse absent members. With no objection, members are excused. Rep. Woz moves to approve the minutes from the last meeting. With no objection, the minutes are approved. All right, well, we are going to take up a few bills today real quick, and then we are going to get to the Attorney General's office for a presentation. Rep. Wozniak, do you want to speak to your substitutes at all?
We've got some technical stuff, but we've explained this. We've provided testimony to the committee previously. So if anybody has any questions, I'd be glad to answer, but I don't think we need anything more in this. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Representative. Well, House Bill 4033 does not have a sub, so we're just going to go ahead and I'll have you move the motion to report House Bill 4033 with recommendation to the floor. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Chair Lightner.
Yes.
Representatives Bagol.
Yes.
Wozniak.
Yes.
Harris.
Yes.
DeBoyer.
Yes.
Johnson. Yes. Schutte.
Yes.
Carter.
Yes.
Hope. Here. Yes. Sorry. Green. Scott.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 10 yeas, 0 nays, and 0 pass. House Bill 4033 is reported with recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. With that, next, we have a substitute for House Bill 4034. Rep. Bagol moves the sub. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Chair Lightner.
Yes.
Representatives Bagol.
Yes.
Wozniak.
Yes.
Harris.
Yes.
DeBoyer.
Yes.
Johnson. Yes. Schutte.
Yes.
Carter.
Yes.
Hope.
Yes.
Green.
Aye.
Scott.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 11 yeas, 0 nays, and 0 pass. The substitute is adopted.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. With that, now we will report House Bill 4034 with recommendation to the full floor. Okay, so let me repeat that. We're going to have Rep. Wozniak move House Bill 4034 as the sub was adopted and report it to the full floor with recommendation.
House Bill 4034 with recommendation as substitute H2. Chair Lightner.
Yes.
Representatives Bagol.
Yes.
Wozniak.
Yes.
Harris.
Yes.
DeBoyer.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Schutte.
Yes.
Carter.
Yes.
Hope.
Yes.
Green. Sorry. Rep. Green. Aye.
Yes.
Scott.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 11 yeas, 0 nays, and 0 pass. House Bill 4034 is reported with recommendation as substitute H2.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. With that, we're going to move on to House Bill 4255 and 4256, which are the fentanyl bills. And I have a couple of cards up here. 425556 does not wish to speak. Brandon Lanyon from PAM supports the bills. House Bill 4255 and 56 does not wish to speak. Kyle Zawicki from ACLU of Michigan opposes the bills. Jessica Zimbelman from Criminal Defense Attorneys of Michigan opposes the bill, does not wish to speak. John Cooper, Safe and Just Michigan, opposes the bill, does not wish to speak. And then we have Michigan League for Public Policy opposes the bills, does not wish to speak. Michigan Collaborative to End Mass Incarceration opposes the bills, does not wish to speak. MI Cure opposes the bills, does not wish to speak. Citizens for Prison Reform opposes the bills and do not wish to speak. With that, though, we are going to move on. I am going to move House Bill 4255 and report to the full floor with recommendation. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Chair Lightner.
Yes.
Representatives Bagol.
Yes.
Wozniak.
Yes.
Harris.
Yes.
DeBoyer.
Yes.
Johnson. Yes. Shudy.
Yes.
Carter.
Pass.
Hope. Pass. Breen. Aye. Scott. Pass. Madam Chair, you have 8 yeas, 0 nays, 3 pass. House Bill 4255 is reported with recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. With that, we're going to move on to House Bill 4256. Rep. Bagol moves to report House Bill 4256 with recommendation to the full floor. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Chair Lightner.
Yes.
Representatives Bagol.
Yes.
Wozniak.
Yes.
Harris.
Yes.
DeBoyer.
Yes.
Johnson. Yes. Shudy.
Yes.
Carter.
Pass.
Hope. Pass. Green. Aye. Scott. Pass. Madam Chair, you have 8 yeas, 0 nays, 3 pass. House Bill 4256 is reported with recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next, we are going to move to House Bill 4045. It's my understanding we have a couple of amendments. The first amendment is offered by Rep. DeBoyer. Rep. DeBoyer, would you like to speak to your amendment?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. My amendment would strike language on page 3 of the bill, starting on line 14. This amendment would place the government on the same footing as every other party in these types of litigation matters. The bill as introduced creates various exceptions to the types of lawsuits that qualify as an eligible cause of action. One such exception is for lawsuits brought either by government or its employees, or against the government or its employees. So it's my position that the government should be held to the same standards as all parties in this type of litigation. If the government files a lawsuit against an individual because that individual exercises their right of free speech on a matter of public concern, that individual defendant deserves the right to access the expedited dismissal process available to every other defendant in every other retaliatory SLAPP lawsuit. So with that, Madam Chair, I would move my amendment.
Thank you, Rep. DeBoyer. With that, though, we have some discussion. Rep. Hope.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I would like to respond that I will be passing on these amendments. I understand that there's some willingness to continue the discussion, but the 2 items that would be cut from this bill actually give individuals protection against anti-SLAPP motions. So to me, I want to protect First Amendment rights of individuals, and I think the exemptions are necessary to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. With no further discussion, we'll proceed to vote on the amendment. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll for the amendment?
To adopt the DeBoyer Amendment Number 1, Chair Lightner.
Yes.
Representatives Bagol.
Yes.
Wozniak.
Yes.
Harris.
Yes.
DeBoyer.
Yes.
Johnson. Yes. Shudy.
Yes.
Carter.
Pass.
Hope. Pass. Green. Pass. Scott.
Pass.
Madam Chair, you have 7 yeas, 0 nays, 4 pass. The amendment is adopted.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. With that, I understand we have a second amendment offered by Rep. Johnson. Rep. Johnson, would you like to speak to your amendment?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. My amendment would strike language on page 5 of the bill, starting at line 24, which is subsection 7. The bill as introduced provides for an automatic stay of proceedings in the trial court when the defendant files a motion for expedited dismissal of a SLAPP lawsuit. However, the bill contains exceptions to that automatic stay of proceedings. One such exception is that the trial court can hear and rule on all unrelated motions and motions presumably filed by the government seeking a special or preliminary injunction to protect against alleged threats to public health and safety. As Rep. DeBoyer just explained, the government should be held to the same standards as all other parties in this type of litigation. An automatic stay is an automatic stay, and there should be no exceptions for lawsuits filed by the government against its citizens in an attempt to chill the expression of their First Amendment rights. With that, Madam Chair, I move my amendment.
Thank you, Representative. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll on the amendment offered by Johnson?
To adopt the amendment, number 2, offered by Rep. Johnson, Chair Lightner.
Yes.
Representatives Begol,
Yes.
Wozniak.
Yes.
Harris.
Yes.
DeBoyer.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Shooty.
Yes.
Carter.
Pass.
Hope. Pass. Green.
Have.
Scott.
Pass.
Madam Chair, you have 7 yeas, 0 nays, 4 pass. The amendment is adopted.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Okay, we have a couple of cards in regards to House Bill 4045. Not wishing to speak, supports the bill, Sonny Koch, or Cook, I don't know. How is it? Where are you at? Where'd you go? Cook. Anyways, and Tim Golding of Americans for Prosperity supports the bill, doesn't wish to speak. Kyle Zawicki supports the bill, does not wish to speak. And then we have, real briefly, wishing to speak, Nicole Kiwe Biber from Clean Water Action, wishing to speak and supports the bill.
Thank you all for the opportunity just to speak very briefly. Assuming that the bill remains, functional, everything with the amendments to what I think is the most important part, to protect citizens from the chilling effect of retributive and abusive strategic lawsuits against public participation. Now, with Clean Water Action, often when people come and rally with us or show up and to exercise free speech and rights of assembly, it's often a situation of great stress and turmoil, where water and air quality are at risk or already polluted, and often one feels alone or overpowered or overwhelmed. So, we really depend on one another to speak up for the places we love and the water that we all depend upon. So, may question.
Okay, I think we're all set with that. And so right now we are going to report House Bill 4045 with recommendation to the full floor. Madam Clerk.
As amended as a new substitute.
As amended with an
As a new substitute.
yes.
To report House Bill 4045 with
We didn't have a
recommendation
new substitute.
as amended as a new sub.
That's how she says it.
Chair Lightner.
Yes.
Representatives Begol,
Yes.
Wozniak,
Yes.
Harris.
Yes.
DeBoyer.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Shooty.
Yes.
Carter.
Yes.
Hope.
Yes.
Green. Scott.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 11 yeas, 0 nays, 0 pass. House Bill 4045 is reported with recommendation as amended as a new sub.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right, next we are going to go ahead and move on to House Bill 4047, 4048. I'm going to read in cards first on that. The first one we have is from Brandon Lanyon from Pam. Does not wish to speak, supports the bill. Michigan Domestic and Sexual Violence Prevention and Treatment Board supports the bills and does not wish to speak. And then we also have before us substitute for House Bill 4047. I'll move to adopt the sub Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
To adopt the H2 sub to House Bill 4047, Chair Lightner.
Yes.
Representatives Begol,
Yes.
Wozniak.
Yes.
Harris.
Yes.
DeBoyer.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Shooty.
Yes.
Carter.
Yes.
Hope. Yes. Green. Pass. Scott. Pass. Madam Chair, you have 7 yeas, 0 nays, 4 pass. The substitute is adopted.
Thank you. With that, we're going to move to report the new sub with recommendation for House Bill 4047 to the floor. Please call the roll.
Chair Lightner.
Yes.
Representatives Begol,
Yes.
Wozniak.
Yes.
Harris.
Yes.
DeBoyer.
Yes.
Johnson. Yes. Shooty.
Yes.
Carter.
Yes.
Hope. Yes. Green. Aye. Scott. Yes. Madam Chair, you have 11 yeas, 0 nays, 0 pass. House Bill 4047 is reported with recommendation as substitute H2.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. With that, we're going to move on to House Bill 4048. Rep. Begol moves to report House Bill 4048 with recommendation to the full floor. Please call the roll.
Chair Lightner.
Yes.
Representatives Begol,
Yes.
Wozniak.
Yes.
Harris.
Yes.
DeBoyer.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Shooty.
Yes.
Carter.
Yes.
Hope. Yes. Green. Aye. Scott. Yes. Madam Chair, you have 11 yeas, 0 nays, and 0 pass. House Bill 4048 is reported with recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. With that, that's all the bills that we have before us today. So I will invite the Attorney General, Dana Nessel, up to the table along with her team for a presentation. Thank you for being here today.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me here today. Just give me a second. I have 17 binders. That's right. Good morning, Chairwoman Lightner, members of the Judiciary Committee. I want to thank you so much for inviting me here to talk to you today about the work of the Department of Attorney General. And with me today I have Danielle Hageman-Clark, who's our Criminal Justice Bureau Chief, and Ashley Steffen, our Legislative Liaison. Now, this committee and my department have worked collaboratively for the entirety of my tenure, and I look forward to that work with all of you for this legislative session. But before we get too much into the details, I really do want to give some folks an overview of the department for those who might be newer in the legislature or newer to Judiciary Committee, so that people have a better understanding of how the department works. So, as Attorney General, I am the lawyer for the state of Michigan, for the governor, but also for the people. And the Attorney General, of course, is a constitutional officer, the chief law enforcement officer in Michigan, and the head of the Department of Attorney General department, of course, within the executive branch of government. The AG's duties are derived from common law. They're prescribed by statute, court decisions, and also by tradition. And the department, of course, defends the state of Michigan. We are the lawyers for the state. We represent state officials. We represent, of course, the state agencies and departments. And from time to time, we represent the state legislature upon request. I also have the authority to intervene in any lawsuit, criminal or civil, if it serves the interests of the people of the state of Michigan. And we handle the biggest cases that are filed in the state. We save the state of Michigan a tremendous amount of money every year. And I will just mention, because I did see, I think you guys referred to it as skinny budget. $0.00 appropriated to the Department of Attorney General. Let me tell you why that's a bad idea. Our state would go bankrupt literally within weeks were that to happen, because of course we defend all the lawsuits against the state. And I'm really proud. We hear a lot of talk about government employees, and lately I've been hearing actually a lot of really negative commentary about it. I'm going to tell you that for the staff that I have at the department, I think I have some of the hardest and most dedicated public servants anywhere in my department, and they do a tremendous amount of work for the people of the state of Michigan, and I'm very, very proud of the work that they do. Our anticipated caseload is usually around 48,000 cases per year. That doesn't include active investigations or expungement applications, client-level advice, or trainings that we conduct all over the state of Michigan. And who works at our department? Well, of course, assistant AGs, legal assistants, investigators, victim advocates, clerical personnel, paralegals, and as of Monday, a victim advocate dog named Bailey to work with our victims. Private sector attorneys generally charge 4 to 5 times the rate that an assistant AG gets paid, and that includes the benefits. And that translates to hundreds of millions of dollars in savings to the state of Michigan. Our department operates on approximately 1/3 of 1% of the state general fund. And the appropriations for fiscal year 2024 was less than $120 million. But the department won over $505 million in awards payable to the state and to the residents of Michigan in 2024. And our average is over $435 million per year in awards. So that's basically for every dollar that the state pays for our department, we bring $4 back to the state and to the state residents. And we're the only department in the state that contributes revenue to the state that is not a tax or a fee. And we have money that comes, of course, from judgments and settlements reached in cases by our office, and that includes our opioid litigation, but is also child support non-payment enforcement, where we recovered $26 million last year, saving utility ratepayers money, $439 million last year, and many more. And our opioids related litigation, we are now past 11 settlements, and at about 1.634 billion with a B, dollars in settlement awards. So far to date, we've had $282 million that has been paid out into the Michigan Opioid Healing and Recovery Fund, and local governments have received over $176 million. Some other work we do, of course, we talked about our child support department, but very, very important. We've helped in terms of custodial parents. The number of children that we've brought money to assist, almost 31,000. Our cost to operate is $5 million, but our recovery, as I stated, was $26 million last year. Our special litigation department that involves challenges to the utilities when the utilities try to raise our rates. Our total savings for ratepayers during my time in office, this is wrong, what we have on here. It's now at about $4 billion. In 2024, we had $439 million, and we've started off so far this year with $280 million in savings. And in terms of why that is, well, it's because my philosophy is simple. If the utilities are going to try to raise our rates, then make their case to the Michigan Public Service Commission. We challenge them each and every time, and we've had a great deal of success in many of these cases. In terms of our consumer protection work, which hopefully people are familiar with, we take over 10,000 complaints a year We have our corporate oversight division that houses the consumer protection team and enforces statutes that protect consumers and charities, such as the Michigan Consumer Protection Act, Michigan Antitrust Reform Act. Direct consumer and state recoveries totaled over $16 million last year. You've probably seen that we issue alerts to consumers about scams and deceptive business tactics, privacy threats, emerging identity theft schemes. I'm really on a daily basis, and we keep them on our website. And we have a one-stop shop place that everybody can go so you can look up whatever scams are out there so that people can be aware sometimes before they click on that link. We register or license over 12,000 charities and professional fundraisers on an annual basis, and we also investigate and enforce charitable trust laws against charities, professional fundraisers, and charitable trustees. Our Criminal Justice Bureau, we do a great deal of work involving a variety of different kinds of cases. But just some of the work that we do in enforcing public safety and supporting victims of crimes, our sexual assault kit work that we do, for which the legislature appropriated $1.48 million in funds for sexual assault enforcement efforts. We've entered into agreements with several county prosecutors to fully investigate and prosecute cases identified through the testing of submitted sexual assault kits. We call it the SAKI unit. And so we have agreements with Ingham, Kalamazoo, Washtenaw, and Wayne County prosecutors' offices. We have, as of last year, a brand new division, Operation Survivor Justice. And these are identified defendants on certain types of sexual assault cases who have fled the jurisdiction and are now outside the state of Michigan. And so far, just since, is it September? Danielle? October. Just since October, 51 cases reviewed, 13 adopted for full prosecution and extradition, 34 extraditions, and thank you, and many more cases that we're currently working on. Our address confidentiality program, housed within the Department of Attorney General, where people who have been crime victims of, things like sexual assault, domestic violence, stalking, other kinds of harassment. There are currently 315 applicants enrolled in the program. We truly believe that for a lot of these cases, which we know sometimes result in homicides due to the accessibility now on the internet of information about people, this is a valuable tool in terms of protecting lives, and we think that we've done just that. And we've worked really hard to make sure that people know about the program around the state. And I've gone all over the state talking about it and trying to enroll people to become assistants in working with victim advocates to help utilize the portal so that we can enroll more people in it. And I think the numbers are only going to grow. Our organized retail crime unit, which we started 2 years ago.
April 2023.
Okay, April 2023. So far, I think this is the model for the nation, and it's not just me saying that. The White House came and paid us a visit, noted that we've been asked to go all over the country to talk about our dedicated unit. We so far have charged over 85 defendants in 42 cases, recovered over $10 million in merchandise and millions more in cash and also cryptocurrency. We work together with local and federal partnerships, and also it's a public-private partnership because we also work with our partners in brick-and-mortar retailers and also online retailers. And we've recently expanded, actually, so that we're doing more auto theft work. There's been an exponential rise in the number of auto theft cases around the state. So we've expanded to do more of that work as well. Sentinel Project, which I started 3 or 4 years ago. But essentially what this is, it's a team of investigators, and we have a nurse on staff, and then our attorneys who go into nursing homes and pay surprise visits. And, Laura does make visits to nursing homes, but they do it in a planned manner where, they will tell somebody ahead of time, we'll be there 2 weeks from Tuesday at 1 p.m. And I guess I've just been a prosecutor for too long. I really liken it to a search warrant. We don't call people up and say, hey, we're looking for drugs and guns at your house. We'll be there, a week from Wednesday at 3 o'clock. So these are surprise visits. They're done all throughout the course of the day and in the evening as well. And what we do is we do a complete interview process of the staff and also the residents of these facilities to make sure that everybody's safe. And then we look at certain things like wound care, infections, other things and this is based on complaints that we receive in the office to make sure that residents are getting the care that they deserve. And in 2024, we made 36 Sentinel Project visits alone all over the state of Michigan. I mean, every region of the state, including the farthest reaches of the Upper Peninsula. And as a result of that, sometimes we have criminal cases that result from that. Actually, in October of 2024, resulting from one of these visits, we had a nurse that was convicted, and it involved a serious fall where an elderly person was seriously injured. We've found cases of false medical documentation, and we've actually made a number of referrals to APS and to LARA as a result, and then they do follow up on that as well. And what we do, our goal is not to shut down these facilities because we need them, but we want them to improve. So what we do is we work with them, and oftentimes we'll make repeated visits back to make sure that they are doing the work that they should and that the residents are being properly cared for. Our Elder Abuse Task Force, I'm sorry, I missed the Murdered and Missing Indigenous People. This is an initiative that we started last year?
September.
Okay. And there just were a very significant number of cases of Indigenous people who just turned up missing one day, or their bodies were found somewhere. And what we discovered was that there had really never been an investigation, a true investigation of any kind, into what happened to these individuals. All we know is that one day they were gone, and the next day their body was found, or sometimes their body was never found at all, and no one knows what happened to those people. So we started working with the tribes and with our partners at the MSP, as well as federal partners, and we're making some great strides in terms of investigating some of those cases. Our Elder Abuse Task Force launched in 2019. I know we have people right here on the committee that are part of the Elder Abuse Task Force. And Rep. Wozniak, I think have you been on the entire time since 2019? I believe so. Yeah. So as you know, then we do a lot of good work. And not only has this been a great initiative, and I think we have over 55 different partner organizations, senior advocacy organizations, and other groups. But, we've made some great changes. We have the Elder Abuse Reporting Form that is now utilized by every single law enforcement agency in the state, local, the county sheriffs, and the Michigan State Police. And you guys didn't even have to pass a law. Everybody just did it voluntarily. But I think that has been really significant in terms of our ability to properly investigate these cases. And what we found is that it wasn't a lack of will on the part of police agencies. They just didn't have the training, and the form really matters, so they can go through the form whenever there's the suspicion of some sort of elder abuse. And of course, you guys have already passed some really significant laws as a result of recommendations from this, and I would point to the Financial Exploitation Prevention Act as something that's made a real difference in the lives of a lot of people, including, I will say, my parents, who, because of this law, did not lose their life savings, no matter how many times my mom clicks on certain links or thinks that, Amazon or Apple or, the United States Postal Service is trying to get a hold of her. But because of this law, she's she's not lost her life savings, nor has my father. And I mean, I think that's true for probably thousands of people across the state. And of course, I know you have bills right now that are pending, and we look forward to hopefully getting a number of bills that were generated from this task force through to the governor's desk. And so that's some pretty significant work. We're very proud of it. We also do a lot of trainings, by the way, all over the state to assist agencies that just need some better training. Parole appeals. We just started this last year. It says unit was created in 2022. We had one case and then we made it a full-time division last year after we recognized the need. What we saw is that, as you all know, and I'm probably preaching to the choir, prosecutors' offices are just significantly understaffed, and I would argue underfunded. And what we saw is that the prosecutor's offices just didn't have the bandwidth to file parole appeals when you had an individual, being paroled, in our opinion, too early, and when at a time when that person still posed a significant threat to the public. So we started on, understanding that the counties didn't have the capacity to do it. We started doing it. So we've done that in a number of cases now, and we've been successful on some really important cases. And it's helpful to give the victim a voice so that he or she isn't just going before the parole board and doesn't have anybody there to assist them. So we've done a lot of that work. Our hate crimes and domestic terrorism unit that I started back in 2019. So far, we have had 40 cases that were threat-related charges. We've had a few cases here and there that were hate crimes. Really what we've been focusing on are threats to public officials, and it will not surprise any of you to know that those have been escalating over the course of the last several years. And yes, we've had a number of threats against the governor and the Secretary of State, but also many against state representatives and county prosecutors and judges and members of law enforcement, and also county officials, county offices, and other government, local governments. So we have handled a number of those cases, and most of these we've ultimately been pretty successful on, and actually we just helped to appeal what I thought was a bad ruling on a Wayne County case that would have potentially eliminated some really important terrorism charges that are on the books. But we need to be really proactive on this because as we saw, we just saw this with Governor Shapiro, his family the other day. Some of these threats are really scary, and sometimes it's not just threats. Sometimes people follow through on their threats against government officials. So it's important that we have somebody who, is handling these cases statewide and who has also a lot of expertise on First Amendment-related issues, as my department does. Human trafficking, we house the Human Trafficking Commission, and our task force chair is Assistant AG Melissa Palapu, who's been doing an incredible job. And it's a combination of things. It's of course investigating cases, charging cases, but it's also training law enforcement and training other people, whether you're talking about people who work at truck stops or at motels and hotels around the state, helping to craft legislation that comes before all of you, more of which we have to come, and that hopefully we'll get past this session. And we just had we have a case that's in court right now involving illicit massage parlors, a number of them, I think 4 around the metropolitan Detroit area, where we were able to liberate 10 women who were being literally held hostage for a lengthy period of time, not allowed to leave the facility at all. Our past work, prosecuting attorney appellate services, we handle all of the appeals for all of the counties that have fewer than 75,000 people, which is most of the counties in Michigan. And we've been slowly increasing in the amount of cases that we're handling for the counties. 2023, 76 of those cases, 2024, 73 of those cases. They just don't have the capacity to handle their own appeals. And so we provide that work for them. That's not something that's legislatively mandated. We don't get any extra money for it, but we think that it's important work nonetheless. SPAs, special prosecutor assignments. These are when there is some sort of a conflict where the county prosecutor can't handle a case, and so it gets referred first to us, and if the department accepts it, then we take the case. If we can't take it for whatever reason, it goes to PAC, the Prosecuting Attorneys Coordinating Council. But we've been handling more and more of these cases. And why have we been keeping so many of these cases, and why are so many more referred? Well, for many reasons, but one is that we've had a lot of turnover in county prosecutors lately, and a lot of people who run for county prosecutor were defense attorneys. So now they're conflicted out of all of the cases that were theirs that are in that county, and now somebody's got to handle them. So we've been taking more and more of these cases. We've also had to take on a lot of situations where the elected prosecutor literally just leaves. Sometimes they get appointed to a judicial position. Sometimes I think they're just overwhelmed because they have a hard time hiring staff. It's hard to compete with the private sector. And fewer people want to be prosecutors, in part, I think, because it requires you to actually be in court sometimes 5 days a week. And, you can't wear your pajama bottoms like you can for other jobs when you're an attorney. And again, the pay has been something really difficult too. A lot of people are leaving prosecutors' offices to become defense attorneys because now you can make more money as a defense attorney than a prosecutor. And that's great with the Indigent Defense Council. It's great that they're getting paid more money, but it's not great that they're getting paid more money than prosecutors, in my opinion. So we're taking more and more of these cases, and there's not a day that goes by that Danielle doesn't get a call from a county prosecutor, as she just did yesterday, asking to take some of their bigger cases. Sometimes you'll have a new prosecutor that simply just doesn't have the experience to handle some really, really significant, homicide charges, serial rapists, child abuse cases, which you have to be specially trained and forensically trained for. So they come to us for it. And sometimes they just don't have the staff, even if they have the experience. Sometimes they just don't have enough people to handle those cases. So that's sort of some of the work that we do in a nutshell. Our legislative priorities that we're going to be coming to you on. Definitely human trafficking legislation that passed through one chamber but not both last time.
Passed through the House last
Okay, you guys passed it, then it didn't get through the Senate. Okay, all right. So we have some of that coming back to you that I hope you'll take another look at. Guardianship reform again. Before I leave office, if we could just get some guardianship reform and conservatorship reform, it is so badly needed, and I know it has great bipartisan support. Again, got through the House last time around, and not the Senate. So not your fault. Not your fault that we don't have this, but if we could try it again, it would be great. We have a lot of consumer protection work that we'd like to do with you all, and it crosses a variety of different types of protection for consumers, whether that has to do with data breaches, whether it has to do with robocalls. There's just a lot of different things that I think we could do to improve the law in Michigan. And I will say, talking to my counterparts all around the country, Michigan by far has the worst consumer protection laws of virtually any state in the country. And that's really a shame for the consumers in our state. So that's just sort of, in a nutshell, tried to condense it as much as possible, but that's a little bit of an overview, a lot of the things that we do in the office. And I appreciate your time and listening to me talk about it, but I will say one more time, I'm just very, very, very proud of the longtime civil servants that work in our department. And I know many of you have worked with some of those individuals, and, and they are available to you whenever anybody has questions about things where they have a great deal of expertise, which they very much do. So with that, many
Thank you.
questions? Thanks.
Again, thank you so much for being here and taking time out of your day to come chat with us. I do have a few questions. It's just, based off your presentation. And, well, one, I want to start off by saying I appreciate your comments in regards to parity with prosecutors and MIDC, because that is something that I personally am working toward. I do believe MIDC does need some changes, but I also believe that, prosecutors handle obviously all cases, not just the select few with indigent. And so there needs to be some parity there. So we have safe communities and, our clearance rates are good, stuff like that. So I appreciate those comments on there and look forward to support.
And if I may add to
changes.
that, I'm so sorry,
Sure.
but obviously I know there's been some talk about the many cases that are now going to have to be reviewed again, involving homicide cases where people were sentenced to life in prison without parole who were 19 or 20 years old. I'm very hopeful that you'll consider additional funding for the prosecutor's offices that are going to be handling those. 180 days is an insanely short period of time to have to evaluate those cases, and I think it's hard for me to fully explain all of the work that goes into having one of those hearings. Forget the fact that it's just excruciating to be a member of a family where you had a loved one that was murdered and now to have to revisit the whole thing 10, 20, 30 years later. But it's so much work, and I should tell you that, just recomposing a file from many decades ago, just the work that goes into that alone, let alone trying to contact people that, again, who knows what happened to these people from all these years back. It's so much work, and it is going to take a lot of effort by the prosecutor's offices, and I hope when you're formulating your budget, you'll just keep that in mind as to just how much work goes into that and how important it is, for these types of cases, the most important kinds of cases, right? Where a person lost their life. So just my hope that you'll consider that.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's something I personally had been working on. I've actually sat through a couple of these hearings before, prior to this most recent court case. But I think there's also a couple things that we need to consider in the courts themselves and with some legislation when we're looking at these resentences, because I will just give you a quick example. I had a case from 1976. The gentleman at the time was a juvenile. He was 18, murdered 2 women, beat them to death, unrecognizable, and then took the car and left and just went about his day. So anyways, we had the rehearing in November, and due to laws prior to 1998, there was good time back then, apparently. And so this gentleman who committed murder 2 times, one day, two people, was actually released from prison. His hearing was Monday. He was fully released from prison on Wednesday. No halfway house, none of that business. It was absurd because of this 1998 law. And so the Department of Corrections was like, we had to just let him out. And, the family is still around. They're actually personal friends of mine. And I think that posed a significant risk to our community. I was super disappointed in our justice system because, as you know, generally life without parole is not handed out lightly. But even, having the concurrent sentences for multiple murders, he still didn't do what I would consider justice. Didn't do the time for the crimes that he committed. And so I feel like there needs to be some work done on that as well. But looking forward.
Now that you said that, I'm sorry. Can I just say one thing about that? I think we have to recognize, too, that when you have these individuals who never thought they were going to be released from prison and all of a sudden I don't know where they are, these are individuals, they don't have parole officers or anything.
We talked about this, actually, about reintroing them into society as well. There was nothing for this guy. Granted, I don't think he should have gotten out, but he did. Can't change that. But I agree, there does have to be some sort of process for that little transitional period as well, if they are going to be immediately released like that.
And they're just being set up to fail under those circumstances. So the chances of them recidivating increase exponentially when they don't have any of those services that somebody else would have gotten. And, even talking to people who were juvenile lifers who then did get out, I mean, they say they wish that they would have had somebody from MDOC available, just even ask basic questions. They have no idea how to take care of themselves. And it just, again, it lends itself to them going right back into whatever their old habits were. And so just something more to consider now that we're talking about, it could be hundreds and hundreds of people who are in that situation.
Sure. Okay. So moving on from that one, I'm going to go, I just have a
Stop
question. It's okay. I have a question of clarity. So when you talked about the parole appeals, you said, a lot of counties can't pay for that process or whatever, but what does that look like? Like, how are you alerted?
Thank you for the question. We generally are alerted by the victim themselves. So victim gets notified that the person is being paroled. So the parole board has granted release to a specific individual. The law allows either the county prosecutor who handled the case or the victim to appeal that. I think it's within 21 days of the release being given to the defendant, or the notice that they're going to be released. So it's a very short time frame for a victim to contact our office, be hooked up with a victim advocate, for us then to request the parolee's entire MDOC file in order to be able to recalculate that guideline score that allowed for the parole to happen in the first place. It is very challenging for a prosecutor's office and even our office to make that 21-day timeline. So if you're considering legislation, that might be a place where we would recommend some changes, is giving a little bit more time to be able to get the proper paperwork together, to be able to make a cogent argument about why this person should not be released. Once that victim reaches out to our office, we have a victim advocate, get in contact with them. We schedule a meeting with John Pallas, who's the chief of our criminal trials, or criminal appeals division, and he works then to get all the paperwork together and to make an analysis of whether or not we think there is a legitimate basis to challenge that parole. Not everyone should be denied parole. There are folks who legitimately should be given parole. We attempt to figure that out based on their behavior in prison, the number of misconducts, how long it's been since the misconduct, what the sentence looked like, what the underlying facts were. And then we work that process by filing in the circuit court for wherever this person was initially convicted, and it goes from there.
They also look at their statements to the parole board, by the way.
Yes.
Because there's nothing, I think, that suggests to me more that a person may go out and reoffend than when they are still in denial about the offense that they committed. And so that's something that we take into consideration.
Yeah, we have a case actually that we didn't have to file an appeal on. I don't remember how it came to us. If it came to us, it did not come to us from the Saginaw County Prosecutor's Office. I reached out to them asking for them to send me whatever they had in terms of their original case file. They had the original transcripts from the trial where the defendant had been convicted of breaking into this woman's house and sexually assaulting her at knife point, using her 5-year-old granddaughter as the threat to harm her if she didn't comply. When this particular parolee went for his hearing, he said, there was no child there, I never saw the child, I never had any interaction with the child, and that simply was not, based on the police reports as well as on the trial testimony, that simply was not true. When we were able to put all that together and indicate that we were going to take this on appeal, the parole board changed their mind.
Yeah, and that's not the first time they've done that. So that's how we know this is working, because a lot of times when we submit all the pleadings and the briefings, they say, we've reconsidered, and so
Sure.
I think it's helpful.
Okay, I'll yield to some of my members here. Rep. Breen. Shooty.
Thank you, Chair Lightner. Thank you, Attorney General Nessel. And I have many questions, but I'm going to keep it to two. One of them is very short. First of all, what kind of a dog is Bailey, and when can I meet him or her?
She is a yellow lab, and I'll be happy to bring her over whenever you would like to meet her.
Awesome. Thank you.
And she's a girl.
This is important to me. And thank you for all the work that you've done. Three particular areas that I've been focusing on are guardianship, human trafficking, and consumer protection. If you have not watched the Attorney General's commercials regarding consumer protection, I highly recommend them, even though she makes fun of her parents. And and I know myself, along with other members of this committee, my colleagues across the aisle, we had several bipartisan packages. We made a lot of progress. Didn't quite get there. Looking at you, Representative Wozniak, especially with guardianship. Consumer protection. This is a nonpartisan issue. And decades ago, we had the Globe Life decision, which sort of gutted the Consumer Protection Act. And recently, you've had arguments on the Eli Lilly case. I'm wondering, can you tell us where that is and why that case is important, and the package of bills that we had before, whether or not you believe we should continue with that if you get a favorable ruling?
Yeah, well, I was hoping to already have a ruling on Eli Lilly that we argued that October, I want to say, remember? October or November? October, okay. So we argued the case then, and obviously, so this was a case that dealt with whether or not the Michigan Consumer Protection Act could apply to regulated industries or to individuals who were otherwise licensed in some manner or another. Our argument was that it was never the intent of the legislature to have any specific carve out. They certainly didn't specifically say that. And of course, you guys could have, not you, I mean, none of you were probably here in the 1970s when that passed initially. But you know, it was such a incredible tool. Was someone there? Were you here? Okay, all right.
I know. I
was
just
gonna
said
say, you
I
don't look
wasn't
older
even
than
born
that.
in
All
the
right.
70s. So.
Yeah, me neither, Chair. Me neither. Anyway, you know, it was used successfully for so many years. We're like one of the only states that has an issue like this. Almost no other state has a Consumer Protection Act that's so limited this way. And so we were really hopeful that we'd have a decision by now. But for some reason, the Supreme Court asked us for supplemental briefings on additional questions they had, and now they're having us come back and re-argue the case again. I'm not sure why, quite candidly, but that we don't have a date yet for the new arguments, but we have completed the briefing. And so, you know, what's going to happen in that case? I don't know, TBD. But like everything, I think it's so important that you have legislative fixes, because as we know about the courts, one year they say one thing, another year they say something else. And this way, to be able to say no, very specifically, you know, regulated industries and licensed individuals, there is not a specific carve out for them. And we can also pursue those cases, whatever that is, you know, whether that's, you know, some person that buys a vehicle that turns out to be a lemon, and then, you know, like, oh no, but, you know, there's other types of regulations for automobile manufacturers, so we can't go after them. And I mean, just the kind of the list goes on, and all the kinds of cases that are handled by almost every other state in the country except for Michigan. And I'll just give you by way of an example, just real quickly. I was so frustrated. Texas brought this case because GM was basically using software to track all kinds of information about people who had leased their vehicles, and then they were selling it to the insurance companies so that your insurance company secretly would know everything about your driving habits, including if you stopped too quickly, or, when you were speeding, or all kinds of things related to that. They didn't say anything. Nobody knew about that. So then they sold that to the insurance companies, and then the insurance companies would use that to raise the rates of these drivers. Now, they didn't use it to lower the rates of any really good drivers. They only used it to raise rates. And so Texas immediately brought a case saying that was a violation of privacy, amongst many other things. And I would have loved to brought that. I would have loved to have brought that case. I don't think that's wrong. They don't even tell people that they have that kind of software in the system, and they're using it to raise people's rates, and people don't know it when they go to lease a vehicle. But I couldn't bring it because of, Globe Life, and, so we are really hoping to see some activity by the court, but it would be so great if I would love to just sit down for those of you who have not already reviewed the proposed amendments and to take a look at them and then take a look at what all the other states do and to look at state by state by state and to see what an outlier we are here and all the good that can be done to help consumers if we only have the right laws in place. Actually, there are other components of that law, and I know that Rep. Breen knows that too, but beyond the Eli Lilly related claims.
Yeah, so actually Minority Vice Chair Carter, he was one of the sponsors for us last session on the package. On the package of bills, as well as for Senator Singh. And one of the other provisions in the bill is to apply to nonprofits. Nonprofits are sometimes also going to become victims of maybe unscrupulous actors, as well as small businesses. Small businesses also can be taken advantage of by a regulated entity, like somebody who maybe is going to put a roof on. And so that is some of the most important work that I think we do here at the Department of the Attorney General in terms of protecting consumers. And despite there not being those changes in place, we still are fielding 24,000, I think it was, 24,000 calls and emails to our office every single year. And we do what we can within the bounds of what the law allows, but we want to be able to help even more people.
Thank you. Rep. Scott?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, AG, for being here. We appreciate your presentation. Could you please explain to the committee the cases you filed against or signed on as an amicus curiae against President Trump and his administration? And what were the issues in these cases?
Well, you want the amicus briefs, or do you want the 10 cases that we actually filed as a party? Because I mean, listen, this would take a really long time. I mean, I've been doing town halls where I do presentations on.
If
all
you
of
want to
these
just
cases.
address, sorry to
yeah,
interrupt you, but
that's-
we have like a couple more questions that I want to get to. And to me, if you want to just say the topic,
I will just
real
really
quick,
quickly. I will
and
just say
then
this. Here's
move on.
what I look for. Number one, whatever the policy is that is advanced by the president or the executive branch, it's not do I like the policy or not like the policy. It's one, does it violate the law, meaning the Constitution, federal law, the Administrative Procedures Act, etc. And number two, is there a concrete and specific injury to the state of Michigan, meaning state government, or to the people of the state of Michigan? So those are the two things we look for. We've been pretty successful on most of these cases. I am going to say this because I know it's budget season, but we are talking about not millions, but billions of dollars potentially in money that is owed to the state of Michigan. Again, I don't know about you guys, what you guys were doing on yesterday. I was paying the federal government a bunch of taxes, over $30 billion that Michigan residents pay to the federal government every single year. We get it back in the form of these programs and grants and so forth. And so we just want the federal government, most of these cases are about the federal government keeping their commitment to give us the money that we are owed, and making Congress have to pass laws that involve whatever those appropriations are and keeping to whatever Congress appropriated. So that is the vast majority of our cases is about money that is owed to us by the federal government, part of the budgetary process, grants that were specifically, approved, and then the money just stopped flowing. So that's like 90% of our cases.
Yeah, and thank you for that. I know that discussions are happening in regards to the budget, overall, and how the federal processes are affecting us as well. So I do appreciate you fighting for the dollars for Michigan that that people deserve, that they've already paid in. I too had to write my extra check yesterday. So, but anyways, I'm going to move on. Representative Schutte.
Thank you, Chair Lightner. Thank you, Attorney General Nessel, for your time today. I know student safety is something that's important to everybody on this committee and all of us in the state. I wanted to know more about your department's work with the OK to Say program. I know that A lot of the functionalities of that are now under MSP. It was previously under the Department of Attorney General. Just wanted to know how you're seeing the efficacy of that program from your seat.
Well, we think it's a great program, and we think that it does a tremendous job of warding off situations where there's a legitimate threat, and the anonymity of it, of course, is extremely helpful in terms of students feeling empowered to make those calls. We did an evaluation when I got into office at first about the efficacy of the program being at the Michigan Department of Attorney General versus the state police, and we just felt as though the state police was a better place for this to be housed. And so that's why we asked for it to be transferred. But we work, of course, in conjunction with MSP on many of these cases. And I think they're continuing to do a great job. I don't have all the stats for you in terms of the number of calls that they get each year, but I do anecdotally hear about many of them. And I think the program continues to be effective and to probably save lives.
Rep Hope.
Thank you. Thank you for being here, and thank you for your work. I wanted to ask about your work with the Jobs Court. I know that's an initiative that was important to you in the previous term, and I'd just like to hear the status.
Well, the exciting thing about your question is that we just graduated 4 people from the Genesee County program. On Tuesday, we had a big celebration for their progress, their work, and these were 4 young people. They all are on their way to really successful careers now. We are at a 0% recidivism rate still. So the program, like any program, took a little while to get off the ground. We had a lot of work to do in terms of, hiring staff and then working, with organizations and businesses and partners, and of course, providing those wraparound services. We've ended up, I think, spending less money than we had thought on some of it. That's been that has been great for the program. We have how many graduates so far, Danielle?
I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't know. I know we've had graduation ceremonies in all 3 of our active counties. I think
Just as a reminder, Marquette, Genesee, Wayne counties are the 3 pilot programs.
And Marquette has expanded to include Dickinson County, Menominee County, and Schoolcraft County in the UP.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's working great with the participants in the program. It took a little while, candidly, to get, first of all, defense attorneys to refer their clients to the program. A program has to be around for a little bit for them to know about it. And if they've never worked with the program before, then they're a little skittish about it. And then we started, reaching out to judges, and I started meeting with judges and saying, hey, could you bring this up? Like, somebody's coming in, they're about to plead guilty to a crime where this person would be eligible for this diversion program. And so the judges started to make those recommendations as well. And of course, we want the prosecutors to feel invested in it. They're the ones, by the way, that review all the cases. We don't make a determination as to whether or not somebody's eligible for job court. The prosecutors, the elected prosecutors, are the ones that refer the cases and say, I'm okay with this person or that person. Of course, these are non-assaultive offenses. But for the people who have graduated, it's been great. We have a lot of people in the pipeline. I don't know if we have I know it's over 100 people that we have in the pipeline just Wayne County that are due for graduation sometime soon. And so we continue to keep track. But, our first graduate, it was really gratifying. This young man who was, for lack of a better term, he's kind of a little bit of a gangbanger, was hanging out with really the wrong people and headed very much in the wrong direction. And, now he's a carpenter. I'm sure he makes more money than I do. I am confident he makes more money than I do. But it wasn't just knowing that kid now, off the streets and, working very hard and making a good living. But he started supporting his kids, which he had 4 kids that he hadn't been paying child support for. And it wasn't just that he started paying child support, but his mom came up to me at his graduation and said, he's become a better father. He's working full time. He's making money for his family. He's supporting his kids, and he's spending time with his kids now. And I think, as I always say, most dangerous person out there is that person who's got nothing to lose. And we want to give people something to lose, and that thing is a good job with benefits. And so for everybody who's graduated from the program, it's worked out really well. And it's just a matter of now we've started to get more and more interest in the program. And, I hope this is long lasting. I think it's the best way to tackle crime and make sure people are paying their taxes and their child support and all the rest.
Thank you. Rep. Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also have many questions, but I'm going to just pick one. First of all, thank you for your opinion on the guardianship issues in our state. Many situations have come to my attention in my district, and we got a long way to go on that. But I also appreciate your elder abuse reporting form. My question, though, is because constituents have filled these out to the best of their ability, they're in the system, and then 6 months goes by, and they call me, and I filled out my complaint, directly to your office, and we're going on 4 or 5 months since then, and I'm not blaming at all. I'm just wondering, is there just shortage of staff, or how? Because we definitely need some movement. There's traumatic brain injuries as a result, and no real change to the situation. The risk is so high. What seems to be the issue there?
So the reporting form that I talked about is actually used by law enforcement. So that's not for the public to fill out. It's what the police officers will use, or the sheriff's deputies, when they go to a scene and there is a suspicion of an individual possibly being the victim of elder abuse. That's the form that they fill out, and there's very specific information that just lends itself to elder abuse that then is forwarded to the prosecutor's office. Civilians don't fill that one out. But I think you're talking about just regular complaints that would come into our department.
So they filled out the claim, and maybe that's the problem, that the law enforcement we haven't involved them. I haven't led them to involve them in that reporting form, in addition to my filing a complaint and the constituent, correct?
Right. Well, we generally encourage people to go first to local law enforcement, so to call up their local police department or sheriff's department to make that claim. And then again, the law enforcement entity would then come and make a visit and follow up on whatever that complaint is, fill out that form. That form would go to the county prosecutor. What we do, beyond giving trainings to the county prosecutors, we usually make the offer of, if you want our department to assist you in any way, meaning, maybe you want us to work with the local prosecutor because we have a little bit more expertise in some of these issues, or for some of the financial crimes, especially. Sometimes, there's 20 bankers' boxes full of files that somebody's got to go through, and the local prosecutors just don't have the staff sometimes to do that. So we handle, when you have a case especially where you have an abusive guardianship situation or an abusive conservatorship situation, and you probably read those in the news every day. We're constantly bringing those cases, but more often than not, it starts with the local authorities, and then it moves to us. Sometimes we will get those complaints directly made. I don't know if you want to. Danielle oversees our financial crimes division, and Scott Teeter is the division head. Probably many of you have dealt with him on guardianship and conservatorship issues, because he has very strong feelings about that, and he's great at explaining those cases. But do you want to talk a little bit about our financial crimes unit and the handling of those types of cases?
Sure.
Can you hit your button, please? Thank
Sorry,
you.
not used to this. Our financial crimes unit handles those elderly financial abuse cases. Our healthcare fraud team does some of the physical elderly abuse cases. If you have filed a complaint with our office, every one of your constituents, as well as yourself, should have received a response from us in some way, either saying, reach out to local law enforcement, we'll have a phone call. I'd be happy to have a conversation outside of this to follow up with you. And so I'm not entirely clear about what happened with your constituent, but they should have received something from us.
Thank you. Rep. Carter, last question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'll make it a long one since no. But real quick, I've been getting a lot of calls, and I understand you have a new website for Social Security. When did it launch? And what are the most common questions? And how can other folks refer people to it that did not know?
Yes, thanks for that question, Rep. Carter. So, as you all, I'm sure, are aware, there have been some significant changes made to the Social Security Administration out in Washington, D.C., and that involves, I think, layoffs. I want to say there's something 6,000 people, and a number of branch offices being closed, and that includes 6 in the state of Michigan. So we launched this website, Kim, 2 days ago? Last Friday, because we wanted to hear what issues, if any, people were experiencing. Anecdotally, we've been hearing a lot about it, but we wanted more concrete, specific information about it. So I checked, and as of yesterday, we had 126 cases or complaints that had come in. 30 people who didn't receive their check at all, 15 who received their check late, 28 who received a check for the incorrect amount, and 53 that just couldn't reach anybody at the Social Security Administration. Anecdotally, our Solicitor General just turned 65, and so she had to get her paperwork in as you're required to at that age. And she spent 5 hours on the phone waiting to talk to somebody. When she finally got a hold of somebody, they said, can't help you have to come in person. So those are the kinds of things, obviously, that concern us greatly. We just filed an amicus case on behalf of a disability group that was suing the Social Security Administration because of a lot of people who had been cut off. And so what we are looking to do is to compile this information, and people can go right to our website, get that information about who is having what issue, and then if need be, honestly, if we have to sue the Social Security Administration, that is what we're going to do if we can identify that lots and lots of people in Michigan are suffering, again, specific concrete injuries. And to me, not getting your Social Security check is a pretty big deal. A significant amount of seniors, if you look at it statistically, but for their Social Security, people could not make their basic needs or necessities, and that includes paying their electric bill, that includes their grocery bill, that includes literally life-sustaining types of purchases that you have to make. And you'd be surprised, you probably wouldn't be surprised, Rep. Carter, how many people rely entirely. They don't have any other source other than their Social Security. So when people stop receiving their Social Security money, or it's delayed, or it's the incorrect amount, I get really nervous for seniors. And I'm sure all of you do. And so we want to make sure that the Social Security Administration, again, this is our money. We did pay into this system, and we want to make sure that people who are deserving of their Social Security continue to receive their Social Security.
It's on our Fed Action Tracker. So if you go to mi.gov/AG Federal Actions, it's the first button. If you can't remember that website, go to our website and go to the News and Outreach section, and it's in the drop-down.
Thank you.
We'll send it to you as well.
That'd be good. Send it to the committee, please. Yes. Again, thank you. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. I know we all do, and we have lots of work to do, it seems like. So looking forward to all of that as well. With no further business before the committee is adjourned.
Thanks for